Chapter 14, The Roaring Twenties. Part 1, The Twenties Do Indeed Roar. The fast-paced life in America's cities and towns. The war had brought a massive economic boom to a rapidly expanding American economy with the huge demand for war goods. Everything from the food products produced in vast numbers on American farms to the uniforms, guns, and ammunitions, and even eventually tanks, airplanes, and battleships produced in American factories. But the wartime boom continued right on into the 1920s, at least for urban America, as businesses turned to the manufacture of radios, cars, and home appliances to meet a huge demand of a prospering urban society. Material goods abounded as never before for the great American urban middle class, imparting to urban culture a decidedly materialist flavor. Some statistics clearly demonstrate the impact of materialism in American life. For instance, the radio, the wonderful invention that instantly connected the average American living room to the vast world of news, entertainment, and even thoughtful ideas, went from 60,000 radios owned by Americans in 1922 to a point only 8 years later when American radios reached 13.8 million in number. Likewise, the automobile helped to broaden the same world, allowing vast personal mobility never dreamed of during the horse and buggy days, although the development of the railroad in the 1800s had certainly pointed the way to such a possibility. So rapid was the expansion of the American automobile culture that by 1927, when Ford's Model T was replaced by the Model A, the Ford Motor Company could brag that it had produced over 15 million of its Model T Fords. And to meet the needs of the rapidly expanding automobile culture, the number of gas stations exploded exponentially. For instance, Standard Oil of New Jersey had increased the number of its gas stations from 12 in 1920 to around 1,000 by 1929. But it was not merely a world of expanded horizons. Average middle-class Americans lived at the level of material wealth characteristic previously only of Europe's very upper classes. The wealth in available food, clothing, housing, and furnishing, as well as the mechanical gadgets designed to ease the task of housekeeping, was truly amazing. Again, some statistics give a clear picture of the wealth available to the average American. Woolworth, in its 5 to 10 cent stores, 1,111 in 1920, 1,825 in 1929. J.C. Penney department stores, 312 in 1920 to 1,395 in 1929. A&P grocery stores, 4,621 in 1920, 15,418 in 1929. Safeway grocery stores, 766 in 1926, 2,660 in 1929. Piggly Wiggly grocery stores, 515 in 1920, 2,500 in 1929. Western Auto stores, 3 in 1920, 54 in 1929. The new culture of personal freedom. The new wealth allowed the more adventuresome set, America's youth, to experiment with exciting new clothing, dance, and general social styles, ones quite distinct from their parents' very traditional ways. Girls had their hair bobbed or cut very short, to the shock of their mothers and grandmothers. Skirt hemlines were raised. Feminine beach attire became much more scanty in its body covering, getting young ladies in trouble with the beach patrols. Likewise, the young men also freed themselves, like the women, with their love of the latest in music trends, clothing styles, fast cars, booze and cigarettes, and sex in all varieties. And, of course, There was the excitement of drinking their alcoholic beverages, now forbidden by federal law under the Constitution's 18th Amendment that had so recently gone into effect. In short, it looked as if youthful urban America was dedicated to the principle of party, 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 to drink away the memories of a tragic world they had just left behind. And along with the 18th Amendment was the 19th Amendment, going into effect in August of 1920, giving all American women the right to vote, just in time for the national elections scheduled for that November. Women no longer needed to rely on their husbands to defend the interests of the American family. Women could do also that as well, or simply defend their own personal interests quite apart from family concerns. The 1920s, after all, marked the rapid growth in the sense of personal rather than community interest, in part due to the reaction of the hyped patriotism the country had gone through in its war to make the world safe for democracy, and in part due simply to the fact that the American family was no longer the key support system that the Americans needed to thrive. Under the newly rising culture, Americans were invited to try to undertake life entirely on their own.